Awesome. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to meet you, albeit virtually and everything. I'm Chris.
Yes. I'm Erica. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. There. The first question I have for you is, how did you get into coaching robotics?
I actually started coaching robotics. This is my fourth year doing so. So my first year coaching, I was at a different school than I am right now, and the principal was looking for a new teacher to do robotics. And so she offered me one elective class to teach robotics and keep my other science classes as my normal schedule.
Awesome.
And so I started off with the FLL EV3 kits, and then we moved on to using some of the VEX stuff.
All right.
So it was kind of just an opportunity because of my administrator at the time.
All right. So it kind of like it came out of nowhere and now you have embraced it and run with it. If you don't mind my asking, what science classes were you teaching before robotics kind of came out of left field?
I was teaching Science 8, so that is chemistry and physics.
Oh, that is awesome. I have to admit, I am the least scientifically minded of the like Science Alive team. I studied literature, so all this stuff is like,
Okay.
I'm learning new things every day and it's super cool. But sometimes I get a little confused because I am not the science guy. So I'm super impressed by your background and all the stuff you teach. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ooh. So you mentioned 8. I assume that's like 8th graders and stuff. What are what's the age range of the students that you're usually coaching and teaching?
Right now I teach it's 6th through 8th grade. I have a couple of different sections. So I teach actually right now I teach full-time robotic automation and manufacturing. So I have my school that I'm at right now is a STEM themed school. And so I have 4 classes that are robotic automation and manufacturing. So they learn using the VEX kits, they learn like gear mechanisms and how to code. And then they also move on to manufacturing and like furniture production. But then I also teach an elective robotic competition course. And then I have an after school club when we are in person. That is 6th grade. So my after school club is 6th grade because I don't teach them during the day. And then during the day I have 7th and 8th graders.
All right. That's super awesome. Especially like, since you're teaching like manufacturing and going into that route, it almost sounds like that's like the perfect transition eventually to going into the workforce eventually. Like I know that's years down the line for the student, but it sounds like it could transition easily.
So my school's like goal is to create career fields for students and give them the opportunity to experience some of those things. So yeah, that's one of the goals is particularly the manufacturing. We have a couple of different STEM track students can select from. So that's just one of them.
Okay. That's super cool. Like I was not aware that there were like elementary and middle schools that were kind of aiming at those tracks already. And that's good to know because I realize that is a huge concern, like career options and everything. I know it's kind of a bummer to like get kids thinking about that so young, but it also helps like figure out what they like and say, hey, if you like this, you can also make a living studying it or doing it. Like that is the most empowering thing.
Yeah.
You're doing awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's very cool. Thanks.
What is your favorite part of coaching robotics?
Competitions. They're just really the fun part, right? You get to see the kids' hard work throughout the season as they're building their robots and they're documenting and they're running into issues and in problem solving. And that's great because you get to know kids one-on-one and kind of how they navigate tough spaces. But really like just the competition and the atmosphere of competition, seeing coaches that I wouldn't normally see during the day because they're from different schools or from around the valley. And just watching the kids have a good time. I think the nice part down here in Southern Nevada is that a lot of the coaches, we all know each other pretty well. And our kids work together pretty well, even though we're from different schools. And being able to, it's almost like a family reunion where we get to come together every so often and hang out and do a competition in the meantime.
Okay, that's so awesome. Like, I have not been to a robotics competition, and I'm like kind of sad because I know the pandemic has probably put all of that on hold or is going to alter it in such a way that it's not in person. So like the family
Yeah,
is a little different now, right? So
yeah.
cool to hear that, like, even though it is like a competition, it sounds like everyone is also kind of like cooperating every now and then, and you're all like learning together. So it's like a collaborative learning experience, right? Which is so cool.
Yeah, and you honestly, you have kids who are super inexperienced and kids who have, you know, a wealth of knowledge. There are high schoolers who have been doing robotics in 6th grade, and so there's
Mhm.
a huge range of understanding and talent, and they are so patient with each other. The high schoolers all the time help my middle schoolers because there are things that they know way more than I know, and they can step in and help. And a lot of my middle schoolers, we work collaboratively with one of the elementary schools near us.
Oh,
And we
nice.
do a mentor program with them. Well, when we were in person, this is the caveat, right?
Right, exactly.
um, but we like it's really great to just see across the board the longevity and the vertical alignment between elementary through high school and kids who
Mhm.
um choose robotics not because they know a lot, but because they just enjoy the experience.
Ah, yes. I love that. Like, just doing something because you enjoy it. It seems like this oddly revolutionary thought, but it should be like people, I think we're all trying to learn now, like how to embrace the things we like and
Wow,
not necessarily have to profit off them, I guess. Like that doesn't have to be the ultimate goal. You can do it because you love it. And
exactly.
I dig that. I dig that mindset. I know we've kind of mentioned the pandemic a few times already, but now we're going to pivot toward it a little. Are you coaching virtually this year? And if so, what has been the most difficult change to robotics because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so I am. I still have my elective class. I don't have my after school club right now, but
Ooh,
that's okay. Um, the it's been a weird shift, honestly. It's been a little difficult. Materials wise, we're really fortunate that we have an abundance of materials at my school.
okay.
So we have an abundance of the Vex IQ stuff. We don't have a lot of the Vex V5. So I was able to send individual kits home to my students, and they're able to build at home and
Awesome.
program at home and think about strategy at home. We're not really competing right now because there's really uh, we don't have access to fields at home. Like that's just not something that we
Yeah,
can do.
that's rough.
And so because we're kind of in this weird space, we are doing the online challenges and things like that. So we've been able to adapt the best way we know how. The kids are still having a great time. I still have them. They just actually finished their robot 3 weeks ago. So they've been working on like their robot reveal and things like that. Like some of the stuff
Awesome.
that's just very traditionally Vex that they can do at home and still engage that minus the competition. So we're quite fortunate that we have enough materials to do that. I
Mhm.
know that not everyone does.
Yeah, I have to imagine that robotics can get pricey and like trying to get funding for that is a whole challenge that I haven't gone into that yet. So I don't even know like the hardships that y'all are facing, but I'm glad to know that at least like where you're at, you've got some stuff. It's not
Mhm,
completely bare bones and the students are still doing really cool things.
mhm.
Oh, I guess off the wall question, since y'all are meeting virtually and everything, have you been like recording any of like the training sessions perhaps or like I don't know. I feel like it'd be really cool to like record a build process from like the get go and turn that into something. I don't know what. I'm like riffing here, but I'm like, oh, just to watch the kids build the robot from start to finish, even in like a sped up version. That'd be so cool.
It would. We have not done that.
That's okay. Like I said, that was my off the wall question. Just out of like, I've got a whole list of questions. I'm like, you know what? I might just go off a bit there and see what happens, just for curiosity's sake. Ooh, and this next question kind of ties in with the last one, but what adaptations or changes have you made to the way that you coach robotics, I guess, due to the pandemic?
Yeah, so A part of that is that it is all virtual for us. And so
Mhm.
the hands-on is still there for kids, but for me, it's more difficult to help them problem solve when I can't quite see what the issue is or quite get
Exactly.
close enough to it. And so that has been a weird adaptation. Like, no, turn it the other way. No, okay, I can't see. Like, go move closer. A lot of my day is okay, wait, no, you gotta turn, okay, turn your camera on again. Like it is weird not being able to be up close to it. So that's a weird change to how I coach because usually it is very hands-on and being able to get close with kids and help them problem solve physically.
Yeah.
But also uh, still encouraging the teamwork, even though they're meeting virtually. And so my students are still put in teams and they're still working together, but they've all
Mhm.
built a robot. And so now, if I have a team of 5 kids, there are 5 robots. And so that's the difference in that we can't
Mhm.
compete with 5 robots because I want you guys all the opportunity to build. So you all have kits, but we're going to have to decide on a robot that if we ever get a chance to compete this season that we stick with.
Oh
So
gosh,
I think
yeah.
that's a lot different.
Yeah, that sounds like a scary time, like with 5 or so kids all building their own and then telling them, "I'm sorry, we have to go with like one of them," right? So
Mhm.
I create a bit of friction, but maybe they can all come together, cross fingers, and like design the best robot together, you know? Like maybe building the individual robots is a good practice run to figure out what they all like, and then they say, let's put it all together. So
Yeah, so I think if we get to go back, that's something that we'll look forward to doing. We're not sure down here in Southern Nevada if we're going back. I know some of our charter schools and private schools are doing a hybrid model, but
mhm.
CCSD, which is the public school down here, we're still not sure. So we'll see.
Yeah, I know that it's different like no matter where you go. Like I'm up in Reno, so northern Nevada, and it's mostly hybrid models up here, I think. And like even if people are meeting in person every now and then, like folks are not allowed to go into schools, I don't think. So it all depends on like the school district too. So many different rules, and like I'm glad for all the safety, but I know that it makes all the collaborative stuff a little different.
It does.
Awesome that y'all are adapting. Like more power and respect to y'all because that is amazing that you're still making it happen despite the pandemic.
Yeah.
Ooh, oh gosh, I feel like all these questions are veering down like the negative path, but we can get something good. What are the biggest hurdles for your robotics students?
Uh, well, this year, actually, a lot of them are brand new to robotics.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest hurdle has been learning the fundamentals virtually, and not having the hands-on collaborative work in school. Um, I I don't know that it's weird this year. I have fewer girls than I've usually had in class. So I
Hmm.
have one girl this year, which the last few years I've had more, but those girls have all like gone on to high school. So
Oh.
we'll have some more girls next year, but they're all brand new. I have maybe just 2 kids who have done robotics before. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the fundamental stuff that comes with like having older students who are mentors to them, that's missing. And so that's been a really big learning curve. Because my program really relies on having like not just me as a teacher, but their peers be their teacher as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having my 8th graders mentor the 7th graders and 6th graders has been really important over the last few years and like the longevity of my program. And I don't have that this year because a lot of them went on to high school, obviously, and
Oh
we're
gosh,
uh,
yeah.
the 7th graders that I had last year, um, they were put into a separate semester. So they're
Oh,
in next semester's robotics class. So
oh
the group that
man.
I have right now are all brand new to it. So it's an interesting mix of kids.
Yeah, like starting like totally fresh and not having like it's still a collaborative learning experience, but it sounds like now the stakes are a bit higher and the onus is like on you to get them up to that point, right? And that is a lot, especially doing it virtually. Like
Yeah.
you said, you
So
can't.
it's been interesting. It's been fun though, honestly, because it's forced like kids and me, obviously, to get to know each other differently.
Mhm.
And there's still a lot of personality that comes through virtually. It's just a lot different. It's just not the norm.
Yeah, it's not what we're used to, but like there are those opportunities, like you said, to get to know each other and to show personality. As I'm like
Yeah.
in my room at home and my bookshelf is like glaring through the screen, I'm like, oh no, my personality's like peeking through by accident. So good. I love it. Oh, so we've talked about some of the hurdles and you've mentioned some of the resources you have. What additional resources could you use to support your robotics team at your school? Like what would you need if you had to pick some things like that would just make it easier for you?
Honestly, the like more of the V5 materials, we have some, we just don't have enough. Um, and it's not been a really big deal in the last like year or so because I've only had a couple kids who've been interested in doing the EDR stuff, but this year there's a larger interest, and so like securing more of that stuff and securing more of those materials. Um, I again, we have a pretty like we're pretty fortunate at my school. I host competitions, and so we get some of the funding from REC that way, to
Okay.
where we're able to like maintain a sustainable program and get new materials. But a part of that is my program is growing. This year I'll have more students in robotics than I had, last year and in the year before.
Oh,
Um, and that is just kids who are a part of my elective class.
oh,
So last year I had 30 kids between my elective and my after school club, and this year I'll have over 40.
whoa.
And so it's growing. And so I think there are just like space things that in time, obviously. And I'm lucky to have a partner teacher who's interested in joining as a coach as well next year. So
Awesome.
splitting that and yeah, so time, people, space, but mostly more of the V5 materials because a lot more kids are interested in that higher level platform.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. Actually, there was a question up there that I completely spaced on, and this kind of segues perfectly to it. Like, what platforms do you teach? I guess that was a question that somehow threw me for a loop. So if you could you please explain it to me and answer it? I would appreciate that.
Yeah, so I know that DRI works with both the FIRST Robotics and VEX Robotics, and so
Mhm.
I teach the VEX IQ and the VEX EDR, which is the V5. So the V5 came out 2 years ago, 3 years ago-ish, somewhere around there, as a newer upgraded platform for EDR. So I teach both the VEX ones. My partner teacher, actually, he does the FLL FIRST platform.
Okay.
So that's the EV3 robots. And so we, both, when we thought we were going back to school, we had already discussed kind of partnering and sharing resources across the web, that we have kids who are seamlessly transitioning through programs. If they're younger, sixth graders, they're starting with FLL and then they're eventually transitioning into IQ and then eventually V5 by eighth grade. And then creating a program that is both first and equally vexed so that our kids have options in what they choose. And then
Okay.
also potentially adding an FTC program, which is also first. So we've
Yeah.
talked about expanding our program, but what we're absolutely doing is FLL for our sixth graders. I don't teach that, but he does.
Okay.
And then VEX IQ and VEX EDR, the V5 stuff.
That's awesome. And I
Mhm.
know you talked about how it's been steadily growing and you have talked about expanding it. Does another off the wall question, I guess, does that seem like it's going to be sustainable in the pandemic times? Like, will y'all have the resources you need to expand? I guess
Um,
funny question.
I think I think it's really dependent on kind of how long we're in this space.
True.
Uh, I can't say that we absolutely will, but I don't think that we like right now we do, right? Like right now we're
Mhm.
good with getting materials to kids, and we have like a checkout process if they need extra materials because they don't have enough motors. There's a way for kids to get those things and pick them up from school and then go back home. And so it's a contactless process, which is great.
Mhm.
But as our program continues to grow, um, I really think it's just dependent on how long we have to maintain the social distancing. I think that if we're able to even go back in person and do it in the classroom, well, there's the ability to share resources that's not
Exactly.
happening right now. So it's really dependent.
All right. I'm crossing my fingers that it's going, because like I know the growth like does come with some burdens where it's like you might be stretching yourself a bit more thin than usual if you don't have partner teachers, but hello, Kat.
No, this is literally all day. This is what she does all day with the kids. She has no shame.
That's all right. I have a cat too, but she's a little skittish and she won't always like jump up. But every now and then she's like, wait, you're doing something. I'm gonna get on your desk and like put my tail in the way. So she might
Oh
do,
yeah.
might not. But
Yeah, my kids are so the other day I was like, oh my gosh, cat, move up, move. And one of the kids are like, Miss Lamar, her name is Callie, you need to be respectful. So she's made enough appearances in my class that at this point they are like, you need to be respectful.
you need to respect Callie. She's her own being. She does what she wants.
I guess.
That is so awesome. I love it. Ooh, I was getting pessimistic earlier, but I think we're coming back to more optimistic times. What advice do you have for newer coaches who are coming to robotics during these pandemic times?
I think it's twofold. A, this is weird, and so it's all going to be super uncomfortable. And even in real life, this is weird and it's super uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
you're joining at a great time. um, Honestly, my first, like, I had one team that competed that first year I taught,
Mhm.
and the whole thing was just different. It was something that I wasn't familiar with. I was a fish out of water. And I really relied on other coaches to understand the process. I mean, Vex does a great job of putting out literature,
Mhm.
but I mean, it's way different than to actually do, right? Like I can read and learn that way, but to participate is a lot different. And so it's important to rely on other coaches who are, available to help kids know a lot more than teachers because they spend a lot more time wanting to figure out the problem, right?
Yes.
um, and so relying on their kids is super important. But then it's like there's this almost like fear of trying something new and not being good at it. But okay, like we tell our kids to step out and try it even if they're not good at it, right? But as adults we often rely on not knowing, and so that's why we don't have to do stuff. No, try it. It's not bad, it's really fun. Like the kids are why a lot of us continue to do it because it is so much fun, and they just have a sheer joy that comes with doing robots, like building and problem solving, and their robot falling apart and it being a whole disaster and then having to figure out how to put it back together, right? Like there's joy that comes with a lot of the stuff that we do with our kids, and it's okay that it's hard, and it's gonna get easier. It gets better. You're never
Yeah.
gonna know everything. So
I
there's
think,
gonna be anomalies.
yeah, that is a hard lesson to learn. And it's like, you're so right when you point out that like we always tell kids like just go and try it, just do it, but then we don't always follow that advice ourselves. And like you to say like even as an adult you should just try it, just do it. And like we shouldn't be afraid of not knowing things. I think also like letting kids know that we don't know things is like super important. We can't maintain this facade that like we all understand everything at all times, because that is a lie. And I think it's better for everyone to acknowledge that like there's always room for improvement, there's always room to learn.
Correct. Yeah, and Google. There's always room for Google.
Yes, Dr. Google has the answers. If I don't, Google will know.
You can Google it. I'm not sure.
It's okay. That's my backup all the time. I'm like, okay, you asked a question. I have no idea what it is. I'm gonna Google that. So how do you think accessibility to robotics and robotics education will affect students' attitudes towards STEM?
Honestly, I think it's a really good way to get kids like get their feet wet. the Vex has and so does First or Lego. They have a huge range of like platforms. They have the Lego like Me Do stuff that's for, you know, younger 3, 4, 5 year olds. And Vex is coming out with a new, like, I think it's called 1, 2, 3, a younger age kit as well that goes all the way through collegiate level, right? And so it's a really great way to get kids involved in understanding STEM education and the fact that you don't have to be an expert. The last few years, I didn't do it this year because we have been virtual, but the last few years we've done a girl powered workshop. And it's been so much fun to get a bunch of girls who are like, well, I don't really know, it says it's STEM. And they're all middle and elementary age kids, but they're interested in learning and realizing that STEM doesn't just mean that it's for boys, that they too can participate, right? Vex has like at Costco, apparently like smaller kits that I didn't know about. My kids are like, oh, I saw it at Costco. I got a Costco kit. And I'm like, that's really, really cool. But they're very basic motors and sensors, and like they're not super expensive. And so it's become a lot more accessible for kids. And it's grown into this this space of understanding that it doesn't have to be hard. It can be, again, fun. It can be enjoyable, and education does not have to be tasking. It can be something that you enjoy doing. You can enjoy the process of learning while having fun.
Yeah, like it can be an organic experience. Like I know a little earlier you mentioned like sometimes the robot will just completely break down or it won't work, and then there's like that process of figuring out why it doesn't work, and that while it might be grueling in the beginning, it becomes this like awesome, joyous moment where the kids figure it out, and that feels so awesome. So
yeah,
I dig it. I like the positive mindset, the positive attitude toward learning. Super cool. What hopes do you have for the future of robotics and robotics education? Where do you hope to see robotics in the next 5 years?
Particularly robotics education, I hope to see it in more schools. I think that particularly our Title I and underprivileged schools don't have access to the same resources that like my school, and for example, has, right? And in order for robotics education to be like a true education, it has to be accessible to all kids. And so it shouldn't matter socioeconomic or demographic, right? Like we should see more girls in robotics. We should see more students of color in robotics. We should create avenues for everyone to get involved that wants to be involved. It can be very expensive, right? Like, and thank goodness Tesla's taking on this challenge of funding it. But then the longevity of that, because they're gonna fund, like, you know, your registration for a few years and things like that. And I think that's amazing. But then how do you maintain that programming thereafter for kids? And a part of it is the finance of it. And so for me, robotics education has to be more accessible to all kids, and not just kids who are in a particularly awesome school.
Exactly,
like every kid should have that option.
Yeah, like the particularly awesome school probably already has a bajillion funds and like a lot of folks who are willing to shell out bucks for it. And like not everyone has that. Those resources are not available to everyone, sadly. So like, I don't know, as soon as you mentioned like everyone should have access, in my brain, I was like robotics for all. And I think that should that should be the catchphrase or the watchword of the future. It should be accessible to everyone. Like I agree wholeheartedly, and getting robots to everyone in a way that is sustainable should be the goal. And it's like,
I hope so.
It's kind of a bummer. Like one of our documents that we have like on our Nevada Robotics website is about like fundraising, and like it kind of walks people through the process of like raising funds to buy their robots. And like I acknowledge that that's super important and necessary, but I'm like, man, it's also a bummer that like eventually you do lose like the big funding from folks and you've got to figure it out on your own. And it's like, that's a whole other hurdle you have to get over. So
all right, well, thank you. I really hate to end abruptly, but I have an 8:30 meeting.
No, that's my bad. I ramble too much. So I will I will let you go. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, even my off the wall ones. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. You are awesome. And everything you're doing is so cool. I will do
Thank you. Have a good one.
you too. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.